There's a number of different points to bear in mind when coming to the Seder. So the first thing is to bear in mind, especially this year, it's a very late year, and the Seder is going to start extremely late. And therefore, there's a special inyan to try to rush home from shul and to try to get home and start promptly. You know, there are people, I don't know if there's people, but it could be someone will say, oh, we finished our Seder at 2:30. We finished our Seder at 2 o'clock. When I was a kid, we used to go to school and try to see who finished the Seder the latest, right? But the truth is, it's not such a kunz to finish the Seder late. The kunz is it depends what you did during that time, right? If you get home from shul and you kratz around and you schmooze and you don't make kiddush for a half hour, and then every single person makes kiddush, and then by the time everyone washes, it takes 20 minutes, and by the time you get up, you finish the Seder at 3 o'clock, but what'd you do? So it says in the Gemara that you're supposed to try to start the Seder as quickly as possible. One of the reasons is so that children do not fall asleep. Mm-hmm. And the same thing applies to the adults, that the people should not be falling asleep. We try to start the Seder as promptly as we can. So what can you do to ensure that you start the Seder as promptly as possible? So one thing is that it's not the time to schmooze with your friend after shul. After davening's over, maybe say good Shabbos to the Rav, and then you go home. You get a bracha, fine, and then you go home. And when you get home, I know it's a difficult time for the women, but if possible, to have the Seder as much as possible set up before, so that when you come home, you already know where everyone's going to sit. You don't have to spend 15 minutes trying to work out the seating arrangements. You think through the seating arrangements, you have it all set up, and you get started. You come home, you start 5 minutes later, less than that even. So that's one idea, which is a powerful idea, and especially if you have young children, especially if you have any children, it's important to try to get the Seder started as quickly as possible. Now, what should the avirah, what should the atmosphere be when by a Seder? So, the first thing is that we're supposed to have a certain seriousness. There's supposed to be a very strong element of simcha. There's supposed to be a strong element of joy, of happiness. So we're supposed to be happy that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. Hashem made us His nation. We are Klal Yisrael. We spoke about this already, that we're Klal Yisrael. Hashem took us out. We were slaves. Hashem took us out. He chose us to be His nation. And that gives us a tremendous simcha. It gives us a tremendous joy. But at the same time, that joy, there's a strong element of seriousness, of understanding that this is an important night. And this is a service to Hashem. The Seder night is a night where we pass on the Emunah, we pass on that Simcha, and there should be a seriousness. So again, it's not the time to talk about whatever, politics or who knows what. It's a time to try to stay focused. It's a short night. We're supposed to try to finish the Afikomen before Chatzos. There's not that much time, so we want to utilize the time to try to stay focused. We'll talk a little bit about the idea that everyone has a question: how much should I say? How much should there be participation? How much should I let my children say? Other adults say? So that's a complication, but that's an okay complication. But it shouldn't be how much time should we spend on jokes and how much time should be a focused, serious night. But it should be a tremendous simcha, a tremendous joy, a joy that we're Jews, a joy that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. And if we have a seriousness and that level of joy, we'll pass that on to our children and to our family, the joy in being Klal Yisrael, the simcha in being Klal Yisrael. So we're supposed to try to start pretty quickly, and we're supposed to have an element of seriousness. Now, the room where we are by the Seder night should be set up as beautifully as we can. Just like if we make a wedding, we want to have a beautiful wedding, and people go to great lengths to have a centerpiece and to have beautiful silverware and dishes. It's only for one night. The whole wedding, you spend so much money for one night and it's gone the next day, right? We see them come in with the trucks and they bring in the stuff, and they, if you could afford it, the people who could afford it, sometimes they bring special chairs, right? Just because you want to have it as beautiful as possible. So that's the same thing by the Seder. It's a special night. We're supposed to be like kings. We're celebrating our freedom. We're supposed to act like kings. We're supposed to try to have the room as beautiful as possible. So we put on a fancy tablecloth, and there's an idea that if a person has, it's a funny idea for us, it's hard for us to understand, but if you have, let's say, real silver, or a special silver dish that you got from your grandmother or whatever, some special dish, you should save it for the Seder. Now it's hard to understand. You put it away for the whole year, you just take it out. I'd rather use it a whole year than I get to use it a whole year. With Seder, I'll use plastic, right? But it's really the opposite. What we're supposed to do is use our most beautiful dishes of the whole year, our most beautiful silverware of the whole year, as for the Seder night. Now, of course, on the flip side, you have it's hard work to clean silverware, and the ladies are overworked as it is. So, okay, maybe if you want to go with the plastic, I'm not going to say there's also an idea of women having a pleasure in Pesach, but there's even in the plastic nowadays. You could get beautiful plastic. You could get plastic that looks real. You can get beautiful plastic silverware that the table will still look beautiful. So it costs a little bit more. But the idea is that the table should look beautiful. The table should be set before you come into the house, if possible. It should be set, and you should come in. It should already be a beautiful place. Now, it's not just the table, but it's the whole surrounding. So, a lot of people bring pillows to the table. So there's an idea by the Seder night to have nice pillow covers instead of having, let's say, your children have whatever, right? Curious George, or you come to the table. There's Curious George and Grover and Ernie. They're all with you at the Seder, right? So. What?
Increases their joy.
No, but it's good for them to feel a beauty, to feel this special atmosphere of the Seder night, that it's a beautiful place, that they're coming into a beautiful setting, and the father's dressed nicely. Some people wear a kittel by the Seder, some people don't, some people but to be dressed beautifully, and everyone should be dressed up. You're dressing up. It's a special night. It's a special meal. It's the most special meal of the whole year, and it should be made special. It should be a special feeling. If there's electronics in the room, whether it's a computer or a radio or anything else, maybe cover it over, maybe with a tablecloth, to have that, it should feel like Yom Tov. It should feel like a special night. The whole feeling, the whole atmosphere should be set, that it should feel special. It's not just the mind, right? The whole Pesach, everything that we do on the Seder night is to put the feelings into us. We eat the matzah in order to experience the matzah. We eat the mar to experience the bitterness. They used to eat the Korban Pesach to experience the Korban Pesach. We dip, we lean to act like kings. We act like slaves. It's all feeling. It's all to make it real. And it's not just those actions, but it's the whole avirah. It's the whole atmosphere of the night. It should be a serious, covered, special night. There's a very interesting piece from Rabbi Yashaber Soloveitchik. He has a very interesting. There's a book called. He has two things on Pesach, but I think this is not the Haggadah. It's called, I think, from slavery to freedom or something. I forgot what it's called. And he compares the night of the Seder. He says there was two special nights every year in his mind when he was growing up, and these nights were infused with so much seriousness and happiness. There were such special nights in his mind that he still feels that feeling till today. The two nights were the Leil of Seder and the Leil of Yom Kippur, Kol Nidre. And he compares them. It's a very interesting piece where he goes through and he compares them. But the idea is that if we make it into that special night, if we feel that ourselves, that it's a special holy night, and we put in so much time preparing and getting ready and organizing, and everything's done, that it should be such a special night, everything should be like that. And then it goes into our children, and they have memories of the Seder night, and they think, right, you talk to different people, and they have special memories of the Seder night, right? Someone over here saying, I remember you telling me your Ailib, do you remember? With pouring the wine into the charesis. I once learned with Rabbi Ailib Lehman over here. We learned about Arvei Pesachim, and he was telling me all his memories from. So that's how it works. You're supposed to have memories where you have a feeling of the Seder night, and it sticks with you in hard times. It sticks with you in challenging times. That you're coming to, in challenging times when your emunah is being challenged, when you're in a tough spot. These are the things, the memories that the children look back to, and the children remember, and even when they're much older, it goes into the children. It's all about the seriousness and the simcha, and it's such a special night to utilize as much as possible. So then we're going to try to quickly start the Seder, try to have it set up properly, try to have it feeling beautiful, everyone's feeling in a chashuv way. And the question then becomes, there's always a problem by the Seder night, because you have, on one hand, it's supposed to be v'higada to levincha, you tell it over to your children. On the other hand, very often the children know better than you. They've just spent the past month in school, right? I don't know, different schools do different things, but they come home with these thick binders, and they all have about tons of different vertlach to say, and they all want to say everything. So you have to sort of have a balance, obviously, and the balance is very difficult to tell over in a shir, because it depends on how many children you have and what ages the children are. Every age of children is different, and it's a little bit difficult to prepare, because as you get it, sort of nail it down to a system, it changes on you. Your kids get older, and now all of a sudden they're the next level, and the girls or boys, it's not so simple. But the idea is to have a plan. The idea is to think it through before, and to have a plan, to have a system of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, to think through in your own family, to try, or whoever's your guests, whoever's there, to try to have an idea of what's going to happen. And maybe we'll make a rule that every kid could say 2 Dvar Torahs each night, and then they could say more during the meal. There's still a whole Yom Tov they could say over different Dvar Torahs. So maybe we'll make a rule that every kid could say 4, but to have some sort of plan that it goes smooth. And to think it through, to have a plan before. And not only to have a plan on how you're going to run it, but also to look over the Haggadah before and to think through what you yourself are going to try to say. Because at the end of the day, it's supposed to be Vigad to Levincha, the father who's the master of the house is supposed to be saying it over. So you want to have a plan, first of all, how you're going to have the Seder run. You also want to have a plan of what you're going to say. And some people, if they don't have time to prepare, they come into the Seder. Last time they saw the Haggadah was a year ago. So they come in and they don't remember it so well. They don't know exactly what's happening, and they don't have what Dvar Torah they say. So while they're reading, they look in the bottom of their Haggadah. Maybe they'll say something over, but I'm not saying everyone does this, but by the Seder, I use this. And the reason why I use this is because the Seder is not really the time to read the bottom of the Haggadahs. The Seder is the time just read the Haggadah. The bottom of the Haggadahs are there before the night to prepare for the Seder, but it's not meant that everyone should sit by the Seder table and read the bottom of their different Haggadahs, and each one's like in a different place reading the bottom of the Haggadah. That's not what the Seder night is meant to do. The Seder night is meant to go through the Seder together, to go through the Haggadah together, and to have already pre-picked which Dvar Torahs you want to say. It's not the end of the world if you have the bottom and you already circled, you want to do this one, you want to do this one, but not just like, oh, let me try this one. That's not, you want to pre-pick what you want to try, what messages you want to get through. So, just to review, we're saying that you're supposed to try to come home quickly from shul and have it prepared. Try to have the avirah, try to have the atmosphere as serious and as happy and as beautiful as possible. Try to have a plan of how you're going to go through the Seder. You want to have a plan of what you're going to say and what messages you want to try to get across. And then there's the idea, this is part of these ideas, but similar idea. Did you ever go to a shul? I don't know if any of you ever went to a shul like this, but did you ever go to a shul where you'll spend by brachas, mamash, everyone yells out brachas and everyone answers amen to everyone else's brachas, then they do halukah, and they get all into the halukas, and they're so geschmack, they're yelling halukas together, and then they check the time, and they realize it's almost over, so Shemana Esrei, you ever saw that before? So there's no such thing as that. Even by a Kiddush club, no matter where you daven, you'll never find that. No matter where you daven, everybody knows Shemana Esrei is coming. Everybody knows that the most important part of davening is not at the beginning. And that doesn't mean the beginning is not important, but the Shemana Esrei is the most important part of davening. There's a system to the davening, and when we go to shul, the shul is paced. That different parts of davening get different amounts of time. But no part is sacrificed for the other part. There's no such thing as spending a lot of time on one part and therefore sacrificing the other parts. So the same thing applies by the Haggadah. The idea of sometimes it happens that children want to say varts and you spend a lot of time on V'hisha Amda, and then everyone sings Manashtana, and then you say a Varda Manashtana, and then Avada Mayinu, and by the time you get up to halfway through the Magid, everyone's tired, you're looking at your clock, everyone's hungry, you're looking at your clock and you're like, and you just rip through that. And that's not how it's supposed to go. It's supposed to be paced. It's supposed to be paced where the Haggadah, every word in the Haggadah is important. And every part of the Haggadah is important. And it's supposed to be paced, that you're supposed to cover each part and give it the necessary time that it needs. In fact, the truth is that some of the later parts of Magid are maybe more important than some of the earlier parts of Magid. So the most important part, seemingly, is Rabbi Gamliel Hayomer, Kol Shloimer Shloisha Dvar Malalu Lo Yatsi Dei Chavas. I know it doesn't say these three things is not Yitzis Chav. Pesach Matzah Mar, and then he says what Pesach Matzah Mar is. So seemingly that's a very important part. We shouldn't fly through that without even understanding what it means. So the idea is like this. This is how Haggadah, some people do Haggadah. They go like this. They just read in Hebrew, and then they say, oh, I have a vart about this, and then they say a vart. That's not how it's supposed to go. Every part of the Haggadah should be explained and translated. It doesn't mean it has to take forever. Not in a fairly equal amount of time. Every part of the Haggadah should be read and translated, and make sure that the people around the table understand the parts of the Haggadah. I don't know if any part of the Haggadah should just be read in Hebrew. Maybe benching and Halalukas, but I mean the Magid is supposed to be a story. If everyone around your table knows Hebrew perfectly, so then you're okay. You could just read it in Hebrew. But if most people don't know Hebrew, so then it should be said in a way where people understand all the different parts of what you're saying and what you're doing at that time and what the messages that are supposed to come across. And that's the point of the Magid, not to read parts and then pick out individual paragraphs where you want to say a vart and talk for 15 minutes about that idea.
Does every part have to be read in Hebrew?
Does every part have to be read in Hebrew?
Or is it Aramaic?
I don't know. I think so. I don't know. I'm not sure. But it doesn't take that long to read in Hebrew and translate and explain it and to bring it through, to make sure that there's understanding to the whole Haggadah, not just... It's supposed to be even. The idea I'm trying to say is like this: an even reading through the Haggadah, not 10-minute vart, 10-minute vart, 10-minute vart. It ends up the same amount of time. Just an even, well-paced understanding of what we're saying at each time. So let's go through a little bit of the Haggadah inside, just to understand what's happening at different parts of Magid. And this is going to be a quick, maybe bird's eye view, and then maybe we'll focus on some individual parts.
Rabbi, is there any difference between whether the hit or miss in terms of if just the father says it or everybody says it together? Does it matter?
I'm not sure. It seems like in Halacha it seems to say that the head of the Seder actually says most of it. I'm not sure if everyone listens. I don't know what everyone does in their house.
You're supposed to understand what you're supposed to
my house
understand
will all
what's
say
going
it,
on.
but I'm not sure if
Everybody
that...
says it together?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure how that works, if everyone says it together or not.
If we have to say it so everybody understands it, so that means we've got to do it once in English.
I don't know if it has to be mamish. I don't know if it has to be mamish exactly word for word in English. Every word.
I don't know about you, but I can't read that fast.
You can't read what fast?
I couldn't finish by 12.
Oh yes, you could. I guarantee you.
Oh
yes.
Never have.
That's because you spend too much time on other things. Guarantee you. There's 8 pages here. It's 12 pages. It's less pages than Shachris. Much less pages than Shachris. And Shachris takes 20 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever. Sure you could. It's 10 pages. Go through it yourself. You'll see how short it is. It's very little. It's much less than you think it is. Look, if you really need to skip parts, Machalowitz goes through different parts that if you're pressed for time, you could skip certain parts. I'm not sure what they are. I don't remember what they are. But if you want, I could forward you his preparation for Pesach. It happens to be a fascinating piece. It goes through how to clean, all kinds of different things. Very good.
What's the balance around, giving vorts versus encouraging, hopefully getting the kids and others to ask questions instead, and then you can respond and try and
It's
answer.
very difficult to give a one-size-fits-all answer because, as I said, every family is different. Depends on the age of the children. There's no question about it that you have to get the children involved, and that the Seder night is designed that children should ask. That's why they ask the Manishtana. That's why we do many weird things in order to get the children to ask, in order to have a discussion. And you're allowed to have children even say Divrei Torah because you want them to be involved. But at the same time, there has to be a balance because you are supposed to be telling them, and it's supposed to be the father transmitting it to the son, not the son transmitting it to the father. So it's a balance. It's not so simple. It depends on the situation. I mean, every family is different and sort of has to be judged before. I mean, this is a famous question. Last year they had in the TED, someone wrote into the Chinuch Roundtable what to do about this. And it's a lot of top educators, and they all had different, no clear-cut solutions. It's a difficulty. On one hand, I mean, lots of times you'll have people at your Seder who maybe not be from, or may not know so much, or may not be so smart, and it's a difficulty. You have, I mean, that's the same difficulty you have when you give a class. It's the same difficulty you have, the average Rebbe has. He has 20 kids in his class, 30 kids in his class. They're all at different levels. It's complicated.
So, is it more of a shir or is it more of a seminar? Where
It shouldn't be a shir. It's not supposed to be a monologue
Right.
for 2 hours, because no one's going to listen to a 2-hour monologue. If you just sit and give a 2-hour lecture, you're going to have a lot of sleeping people. That's not the idea of it. The idea, it's definitely supposed to be discussion. It's definitely supposed to be question and answer. But just remember, don't get caught up in the discussion on halach ma'anya, and then manashtana, and then by the time you get up to the end, you got 10 minutes left. That's all I'm telling you. It's supposed to be a discussion, but you have to limit the discussion on each part. And you have to try to stay focused on the words of the Haggadah, not to get too sidetracked. Sometimes people will say, oh, it talks about Eretz Yisrael here. Let's talk about the beauty of Eretz Yisrael. And then we'll get into a whole discussion about the beauty of Eretz Yisrael, and then maybe we'll transfer into the politics of Eretz Yisrael. And meanwhile, we still didn't even start Manashtana, and you're 45 minutes later, and we're discussing Eretz Yisrael. So Eretz Yisrael is a beautiful thing to discuss. It's a wonderful thing to discuss, just not right now. Right? So that's the idea. The idea, I mean, it's supposed to be a discussion, but you have to try to keep the discussion focused. And you have to try to keep the discussion on track, and not to let it get carried away, and to remember that there's more to come. Right? It's like, I mean, compare it to a meal, right? I didn't give this comparison, but you compare it to a meal. So, the mother, the wife brings out the food, so she brings out the fish, and it tastes so good. So you'll have some people, can I have another piece of fish, can I have another piece of fish, right? There's more food to come, relax, we'll see. There's other things that are made, like, have some fish, very geschmack, now let's move on to the next thing. It's soup, okay, next. And by the time you get up to the end, everything was well paced. But if you focus too much on one part, you could sacrifice the rest. You could end up missing out on something which is much better. So, in the Seder, in the Haggadah,
I guess it's not going to go exactly as you planned.
it's never going to go exactly as you plan, but at least you should try.
Yeah.
At least you should try, and you should remember not to sacrifice one part for the other. And if you are going to sacrifice one part for the other, you should try to sacrifice the less important part, not the more important part. No, can't make up for the second. Each night is separate. It's really still counts. Okay, so the Maggid starts off on page 24. So I really just want to show that the beginning of Maggid, I don't want to get too involved in the beginning of Maggid. I wanted more go to a little bit later. So the beginning of Maggid starts off, we pick up the matzah and we say halach ma'anya. We point to the lachmanya, we'll talk about that at a different time, maybe we did that other years. And then we say manashtana. Manashtana, the idea of manashtana is that the children should be asking. The children should be inquiring, what's going on over here, right? It's sort of, you want to make sure there's a question there, not just singing a song, but there should actually be like, hey, what's happening tonight? And then we answer them a very quick version. So we say the 4 questions, and we answer a very quick answer. We're certain, page 26, we've got to kind of move fast. We're servants of the Param Mitzrayim, and Hashem took us out. So if someone has very young children who are going to actually go to sleep, so the Mishnah Berurah says that some people make a mistake, and they put their children to sleep right after Manashtana. And you shouldn't put your children to sleep after Manashtana. You should keep them up for one more line. The answer. What's the answer? We're slaves of Param Mitzrayim, Hashem took us out. That is the Coles Notes version of the Haggadah story, right? That's a quick synopsis of the Haggadah story, and if you do that, on some level, you're at least yotzei the mitzvah halayla, the mitzvah of the night, of to tell over to your children the story. Basically, here's your job: tell your children these words: Avadim hayinu leParam Mitzrayim, we were servants to Param Mitzrayim. V'yetzienu Hashem Elokeinu b'yad chazak v'zar netuya. That's a very short version of the Seder. Now, take it a little further. Why do we say that part? Because what does that have to do with me? Hashem took them out. What does that have to do with me? The answer is it does have to do with you. Because if Hashem would not have taken us out of Mitzrayim, we would still be there. We would still be there in Mitzrayim. Exactly what it means we'd still be there in Mitzrayim. Why would we still be there in Mitzrayim? So either it could mean that Mitzrayim was such a hard place to get out of. Physically, we wouldn't have been able to get out. We never escaped if not for Hashem. Or spiritually, it means that we were so on such a low level that had we not got out at that time, we would have never been able to break free, and we would have just been lost. Whatever it means, and therefore it says, even if we know everything, it's a mitzvah to say over the story of Mitzrayim. That's Avad Amin Nefar Mitzrayim, short version. And the first is there's a mitzvah, it's a tzivui, it's a commandment to say over Sibur Tziz Mitzrayim. That's just a short version of Avad Amin Nefar Mitzrayim. That as long as you do the short version, you're already mekayim your mitzvah. And then there's the Chol Amar B'la Sapper. The more you say over, the more you go into the details. Harei Meshubach. But you'll notice, up until this part, we still haven't said anything about the story of Mitzrayim yet, right? We asked some questions, we said a very short version. Now we're talking about the Chiyuv, right? Then we go to the story, Ma'aser Rav Elazar, they said it all night, and then Amar Rav Elazar ben Azariah, I was like 70. And then we praise Hashem for giving us the Torah, page 28, and we do the four sons, Chacham, Rosh, Atam, Sheni de Elisha. Where are we starting the story? I'm still not hearing. We're supposed to say over the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, right? We went down. Where's the story? So let's keep going. We've got to find the story. Yacham Rosh Chodesh is a drasha. And then we say, Metchila V'Devad Azar, Baruch Shem Avtuchas Yisrael, V'hi Sham L'Aviseinu V'Lanum. Seyu L'man Ma'abik Yisrael V'Rami. On page 32, when we start darshan in the Psukim, is the first time we really say over the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So why do we darshan these Psukim? Why don't we just read Shmois, Ve'era, Boy, B'Shalach, the four parshas in the Torah? Let's just read those four parshas in the Torah. We'll see over the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Why do we do these four psukim? So the answer is that there's really a couple answers, and here's how the Haggadah works. If you open up Shmois, Ve'era, Boy, B'Shalach, you'll see that a lot of Shmois, Ve'era, Boy, B'Shalach is not so connected. A lot of it's talking about the mitzvahs, Pesach, Matzah, Mar. A lot of it's talking about what Hashem said to Moshe, and Moshe said to Hashem, discussions between Hashem and Moshe. A very large percentage of it is focused on the Makkos. A lot of it's talking about what's going to happen, but there's not that much, which is the story of slavery and the story of going out of Mitzrayim. There's only a few psukim about that. So where do we find? So if you're going to read all that, you're not really going to get the story clear, and it's going to take a very long time, and it's broken up. So what does the Baal Haggadah do? The person who wrote the Haggadah, he found another place where we say a short version of the entire story of Yetzias Mitzrayim in four psukim. Where's that place? That place is by when we bring the Bikurim. We bring the Bikurim, we say Vidui, and we say these four psukim, and these four psukim include the entire story of going down to Mitzrayim and coming out of Mitzrayim in a quick synopsis of four psukim. So that's what we say on the Seder night, those four psukim. But what we do is like this. Because those four psukim are a shortened version, so try to imagine if you have, on your computer, you have a short version of a story, but basically every word correlates to a much longer paragraph or a longer sentence in the longer version of the story, right? So there's a 50-page book, and then there's a 1-page summary. So if you go to your computer and you click on any word in the summary, it will hyperlink you to that sentence in the longer version of the story that talks about that in more detail. Understand what I'm saying? So each word correlates to a longer sentence which talks about that detail. So that's what we do in the Haggadah. We say those four psukim, which is a shortened version, but then we darshan each word of those four psukim, we darshan each word and show you a little bit more of an elaborate version picked from there. That's a quick understanding of what we're doing at this part of the Haggadah. So basically, where in the Haggadah are we saying over the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim? Right here. And unfortunately, this is a part that many people fly through the fastest, especially because of Psukim. They may not know exactly what the Psukim are coming to tell us, so they just rip through it. And when you rip through this part, you're missing out on the main point of the night. The main point of the night is the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and here it is. The Rambam says, he says in the beginning of this, when he talks about the Haggadah, Now when he gets up to the drash of the Psukim of Rami Avidavi, he says, V'chol marach umarbe bedrash parsha zu, separately hareza meshubach. So this parsha is the key, this part of the Haggadah is the part where we're saying over the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So one of the things I was trying to point out is that Haggadah, that your Seder should be well paced, is that we should not be spending a lot of time on the beginning, and then when we get up to here, it's late already, so we just rip through the Psukim. We should try to focus on the Psukim and try to talk about the story. So the story is broken up into 4 parts. Pasuk number 1 is the pasuk of going down to Mitzrayim and becoming a nation in Mitzrayim. That's pasuk number 1. So if we let's just look at the pasuk itself for a second. Rami Aviravi, let's leave that out for a second. Vayir in Mitzrayim, we went down to Mitzrayim. Vayagasham, we dwelt there. B'mseimat, we're a small nation. Hisham l'goy gadol atzam ra. We turned into a mighty and powerful nation. That's part number 1 of the story. Jump down to the next bold lines on page 32. Part number 2 of the story is V'yireu Eisana Mitzrayim. The Mitzrayim did evil to us, or they caused us bad. We'll see. V'yanunu, and they afflicted us. V'yitnu aleinu avodah kasha, and we went into Avdus, into the Shibud. Part number 2 of the story is the slavery. So part number 1 of the story is going down to Mitzrayim and becoming a nation. Part number 2 is the slavery, the affliction. See, it's just a few words, right? It's a very shortened version. We're talking about hundreds of years of terrible slavery and persecution and pain and suffering in 6 words, right? This is what we call a very shortened version. And that's the idea. We could be marba and marach and discuss, try to feel the suffering that they went through, try to discuss the suffering that they went through. That's the idea over here. And that's what the next parts are, which we're skipping, is where they bring a little bit more detail. And we could even be moisav even more detail. Discuss what would you feel like if you were a slave, right? How would it feel to have to carry heavy bricks in the boiling hot sun and in the freezing cold and to build, right? This is what it means to be marba or marach, and to understand the slavery, to understand the suffering. Third part of the story is the next pasuk on page 34. We cried out to Hashem our Father. Hashem listened to us. We cried out to Hashem, and Hashem saw our suffering. Because of our tefillos, Hashem looked down on us. He saw our suffering. That's part number 3. That's the third significant part of the story. And then again, it goes into more details. What suffering did he see and what did he hear? And part number 4. Hashem took us out with a strong hand, with an outstretched arm, with great wonder, great awe, and signs and wonders. So the part 4 of the story is Hashem taking us out of Mitzrayim and openly revealing Himself to Klal Yisrael. That's a quick, shortened version of the story. And then again, we're marba. Each part we're marba marach on in order to experience it more, in order to discuss it more. But this is one of the biggest, most important parts of the story. And then we explain each pasuk with more detail, what happened, and we talk about it, and we get up to the 10 plagues, which is part of this drasha. And we go through it, and we discuss it, and we talk about the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And if there's any place in the Haggadah that we should get lost and sort of over-focus on, it's here. Not only that, but even over here, you don't want to only focus on one part. There's 4 parts to the story, and each part of the story has to be focused on. So we don't just focus on one and push off the other ones. And then they have some drushes about that Haggadah. Then we thank Hashem with Dayenu, which sort of finishes off the story. We say Rabbi Gamliel, and now we've gone through the story. We've experienced it. We've experienced the freedom that we've come to the freedom, which leads us to Hala. And that's what we say on page 44. B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam liras es atzmai. At this point of the Haggadah, you should be seeing yourself as if you yourself went out of Mitzrayim. Kilu hu yatz Mitzrayim. In the beginning of the Haggadah, we say, we were saved from Mitzrayim, and Hashem took us out, right? And if Hashem wanted to take us out, we ourselves would still be there, right? And at the end of the Haggadah, we're supposed to be feeling that already. We're supposed to be feeling as if I myself went out of Mitzrayim, not just my fathers, right? In the beginning, we say, if Hashem were now taking our fathers out of Mitzrayim, we would still be there. At this point, we're already feeling that we ourselves were taken out of Mitzrayim. And that leads us Lahoidus lahala lefikach. Therefore, now in Chayavim, page 46. That's why we're chayav lahoidus lahala l'shabeach lefar leroimim lahader levarech la'aler l'kalas. Because of this, we have to thank Hashem, we have to praise Hashem, we have to sing Hashem's praises, all kinds of different shiras and shpachos that He took us out. Me'av the sachiris, me'yavin l'simcha, me'eva liyamta, me'afel argado, me'shib l'geula, and we say hallow. And that leads us to say hallow. And then we break out into song, and we say hallow. That's a quick synopsis of Magid. It's much shorter than you think it is. If you take a Magid, if you take a Haggadah, which does not have English, doesn't have any English, and you just look at how long it is, it's very short. It's about 12 pages. It does not take a very long time to read. Try reading it one time just as an exercise so you get an idea of what it is and how to spend time on it. Try just reading it straight through. Shabbos, a lot of people do it on Shabbos Haggadah afternoon, right? How long does it take? 15 minutes? 10 minutes? It's not very long. Translating into English, also not so long, if you're well prepared.